Executive hears custodian fluent in 7 languages. What he does next leaves. Everyone in the building stunned. No one noticed the woman polishing the sides of the main hall, kneeling near the glass wall that looked out onto the courtyard. Not out of malice, just habit. She was part of the background, a blurred reflection in the glass. A shadow between everyone else's urgency and priorities. Elisa saw that the flow of people was picking up. The international integration event was starting. Visitors from different countries were arriving in small groups. The receptionist was overwhelmed, trying to give directions with gestures, strained smiles, and broken English. An elderly man with a grey beard and a kind face walked through the main door, looking around with a confused expression. He was holding a folded piece of paper with the company logo, clearly trying to find the engineering department. He approached the counter and with a thick accent asked something in Arabic about the Norden 3 room. The receptionist froze. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't understand." The man looked around, embarrassed. Elisa, who was cleaning a glass wall nearby, stepped forward discreetly. "Tafadal Sa'adati. Holturid Musa'ada," she said gently. The man's eyes widened. A relieved smile spread across his face. "Na'am. Mumtaz." They spoke for a few seconds. Elisa took the paper from his hand, glanced at it quickly, and calmly walked him to the elevator, explaining in clear Arabic how to get to the engineering wing. The man thanked her twice, bowing his head respectfully before leaving. The receptionist said nothing. So did the operations manager, who had been watching from the back. Elisa returned to her cot, quiet, as always, but not for long. 5 minutes later, a group of Chinese suppliers arrived. They had the wrong boxes, were visibly nervous, trying to explain in broken English. The purchasing coordinator was gesturing, clearly not understanding. "Nimen shi yao jek sie huoje kitade?" Elisa asked, calmly pointing at the boxes. They paused for a moment, then answered enthusiastically. "Dui shi jeksi." She pointed to the correct label, made a hand signal, and smiled kindly. Problem solved. This time, more eyes turned. At the back of the lobby, Harlan Brooks, Executive Vice President of Delwyn Logistics, was observing. He had arrived early to welcome the Swedish guests, but what he had just seen left him completely stunned. He recognized the cleaning lady by sight. He had seen her countless times at the end of the day, never knew her name, never heard her speak. But now there she was, resolving a trilingual logistical issue before 8 a.m., with a calm no workshop could teach. That's when the Swedish guests arrived. 2 executives and a translator, who apparently couldn't find the manager in charge. The group started talking among themselves, trying to figure out what to do. Once again, Elisa approached quietly. "Ursäkta, letar ni efter mötesrummet Norden 3?" she asked with a native accent. The 3 Swedes froze. The translator looked at Elisa, as if she didn't quite grasp the role reversal. "Ja, vi letar efter det rummet. Följ mig, tack. Det ligger på tredje våningen," she replied with ease. Elisa pointed toward the elevators and accompanied them. The visitors followed immediately, almost as if being led by a senior company executive. The vice president watched, in silence, stunned. When Elisa returned to the ground floor, pushing her cleaning cart as if nothing had happened, Harlan Brooks approached her. He wasn't arrogant, nor rushed, just with eyes newly opened to something he had never noticed before. "Excuse me, may I speak with you for a moment?" Elisa stopped. "Of course, sir. What's your name?" Elisa Morgan." You speak Swedish?" "I do. And Arabic? Chinese?" "Those 2, and Russian, German, and Spanish." He blinked. 7? She nodded without any trace of pride. "I learned over time." Harlan stared at her for a second, as if trying to calculate how many times he had walked past her without ever knowing who was there. "Do you have a few minutes?" Elisa hesitated, the kind of hesitation of someone who has learned to be cautious about unexpected invitations from higher up. "Yes, sir." "I'd like you to come with me to the 14th floor. I have a question for you." The elevator rose in silence. Elisa stood in the corner, hands clasped in front of her, watching the numbers climb. Next to her, Harlan Brooks fidgeted with his ring, trying to figure out how to start a conversation that should have happened years ago. "How long have you worked here?" he asked without turning. 7 years. "Always on the morning shift?" "Yes, sir." The doors opened on the 14th floor. The carpet was thick, the air perfumed, the light different, more golden, less utilitarian. She paused for a second before stepping out. "This way," he said gently. They entered a spacious room, glass walls offering a panoramic view of the city, an oval meeting table in the center, maps on the walls, and silence. Deep silence. "Please have a seat," he offered. She sat slowly, posture upright, hands in her lap. Not uncomfortable, but alert, like someone who had learned to measure every move in a place where she wasn't expected. Harlan sat across from her, resting his forearms on the table. "May I be direct?" She nodded. "You speak Swedish?" "I do. Arabic? Chinese?" "Those two." "How many languages total?" "7." He took a slow breath, as if trying to recalibrate what he knew about the world. "And where did you learn?" "Self-taught, some from books, others by listening to the radio, reading newspapers, helping people wherever I worked. I started young, never stopped." "Any formal education?" "I did 2 years of a language degree, had to drop out when my mother got sick. Then came my daughter. I worked wherever I could, never went back." Harlan stayed silent, not from a lack of words, but from an overflow of thought. "And why?" "Cleaning. Night shift. Let me pick up my daughter from school. Paid the bills. It was steady, never about passion. It was about necessity." "Did you ever think of leaving?" "Yes, but thinking doesn't put food on the table." He gave a small nod. The silence thickened. "Elisa, I've never spoken to you before. I never knew any of this." She didn't respond. "And now that I do, I feel a little ashamed." She looked at him. Not with harshness, but with clarity. "Most people only see the uniform." He bit the corner of his lip, a nervous tick that betrayed when something hit deeper than he liked to admit. "I'd like to talk more later. Consider a possibility." "All right. Could you come back up if I call?" "I can." He stood. So did she. "Thank you for coming." "You're welcome, sir." He extended his hand. She shook it. A firm grip. No doubt. No weakness. She left the room. The hallway was empty. In the distance, someone laughed on the phone. She walked in silence to the elevator. When the doors closed, she exhaled. Back on the ground floor, Elisa was pushing her cart toward the supply room when she heard the same 2 HR guys still discussing the event. "Can you believe the Swedish interpreter cancelled?" "Great. Now what?" "Now we improvise, unless the cleaning lady decides to save the day." The second one laughed. The first did too, but less confidently this time. Elisa passed them without looking, just picked up her pace. She turned the corner. The sound of laughter faded behind her. She stopped for a second, now out of sight. She murmured something to herself, in Swedish, soft, almost a whisper. "Jag kan tala, det är du som inte kan." "I can speak, it's you who can't." Then she kept walking, quiet, steady, invisible, only as much as they allowed. The next morning, the lobby was busier than usual. Foreign visitors still wandered through the floors of Delwyn Logistics, and conversations mixed with the clinking of coffee cups, the click-clack of hurried heels, and Slack notifications popping through headphones. But there was something different in the air. It wasn't the new orange diffuser at the reception desk or the updated corporate playlist. It was the buzz. "Did you see her going upstairs yesterday?" "Her who?" "The cleaning lady, the one in the grey uniform. Teosina going up with the VP." "Yeah, and speaking Swedish with the Swedes, I swear." Elisa didn't hear the comments directly, but she felt the stares, discreet but persistent. Fragmented conversations that died out whenever she approached with the cleaning cart. In the 5th floor break room, 2 analysts chatted while stirring their teas. Want to bet it's some diversity initiative? Obviously, Brooks loves a flag to wave. But she's, like, a cleaner, you know? Yeah, feels a little forced. A little totally. By late morning, the internal phone in the maintenance room rang. Elisa picked it up. Ms. Morgan, this is reception. Mr. Brooks asked if you could come back upstairs, room 14B. She looked at the clock. 11:27 a.m. took a deep breath. On my way, thank you. This time, as she entered the elevator, 2 employees stepped in with her. One of them glanced quickly at her badge, then at the 14th floor button she had pressed. 14? He asked with a half smile. Yes. He said nothing, but the silence said enough. In room 14B, Brooks was standing, looking out the window. When she walked in, he turned immediately. Elisa, thanks for coming. Of course, sir. He gestured toward a chair. They sat. On the table were some documents and a tablet. After we spoke yesterday, I kept thinking about something. She kept her expression neutral. Our company is expanding. Latin America, Scandinavia, the Middle East. And believe it or not, we spend a fortune on translation agencies that still mess up basic contract clauses. He picked up a paper. This one, for example, a contract from Norway. Can you take a look? She took the document and read it for a few seconds. It's poorly translated. This section here, it says, cancellation without penalty for both parties, but the original means the penalty is waived only if there's a 30-day prior notice. This could lead to a serious issue. Harlan furrowed his brow, an expression of both surprise and concern. That's what I was afraid of. I can help with this if you'd like. That's exactly why you're here. He leaned back. I'm creating a new position. It didn't exist before, and I want you to take it. She blinked, just once. Not out of shock, out of composure. What position? International Cultural Relations Coordinator. It includes translation, contract adaptation, visitor reception, global team support, and being the person who solves problems before they become crises. She didn't respond immediately. There'll be pushback, she said. There will, but you've already been handling that for years, silently. She looked at him directly now. Is this a favor? No, it's a course correction overdue. Elisa held his gaze. Will the salary match the role? Harlan smiled, genuinely. It will, and more. You'll also have a budget to build your own team. I've already spoken with HR. She nodded slowly. Not excitement yet, analysis. I'll think about it. Think it over, but if you say yes, your badge changes tomorrow. She stood up. Can I keep the old one? Of course. She extended her hand. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Brooks. Thank you for letting yourself be seen. Back on the ground floor, the silence had changed. The receptionist gave her a faint smile. The security guard greeted her more firmly. People looked, for real this time, and it unsettled her more than she expected. As Elisa pushed her cart past the administrative department, she heard her name, whispered like forbidden gossip. Morgan, is that a manager's name now? Where is she going to sit? In whose office? The world's turning upside down. She turned the corner, didn't respond, but she paused a moment before entering the supply room, took a deep breath, then opened the door. Silence again, but now she was the one in control of it. The next morning, the first change was the uniform. Elisa arrived 15 minutes early as always, but this time she wasn't wearing grey. She wore a cream-colored button-down shirt, discreet black slacks, her hair in a clean, tight bun. Her new badge, still temporary, now read, Elisa Morgan, Cultural Relations Coordinator. The front desk guard hesitated a second before buzzing her in. Good morning, Ms. Morgan. Good morning, she replied kindly. She crossed the lobby like she always had. But everything around her seemed to notice her for the first time. In the elevator, 3 employees stepped in. Silence. One glanced at her badge, another gave a brief, polite smile. She pressed the button for the 12th floor. One of them whispered, Never seen her up here. Guess we'll be seeing her a lot now. Elisa didn't respond, but she heard and kept moving. On the 12th floor, A desk had already been cleared for her, near the International Projects Division. A new laptop, notepad, a kettle with hot water and a porcelain cup. There was even a small artificial plant in the corner. It looked hastily arranged, but not begrudgingly. She set her bag down, sat, and took a breath. She looked at the blank monitor for a few seconds before touching it. It felt like being in a place not made for her, and yet being part of it. At exactly 10 a.m., she was called into her first official meeting. Glass-walled room, 5 executives, 2 external translators, a contract under review with a company from Belgium. In the corner, Victor d'Almeida, senior manager of international logistics, was already seated. Elisa walked in with measured steps. Victor looked up briefly, didn't smile. "Ah, yes, the new coordinator. Welcome," he said with a neutral tone heavier than 1,000 words. She simply nodded. The meeting began. Harlan was present but observed, letting the team engage. A section of the contract appeared on the screen. The agency's translator explained, "The supplier will be released from liability in case of irretrievable logistical loss." Victor nodded. "Seems reasonable." Elisa raised her eyes. "Sorry, but that's not correct." Everyone looked at her. The original phrase is force majeure leading to irretrievable failure of delivery. What's written here implies exemption from any loss. But in the original French, the clause requires context analysis and proof that the cause was beyond the responsible party's control. Victor took a deep breath. "And what would be the better translation?" she answered without raising her voice. "The supplier will be exempt only in cases of proven force majeure and provided there is no possibility of operational recovery." Silence. One of the Belgians nodded. "C'est plus précis. Merci." Harlan smiled, not exaggerated, just satisfied. Victor leaned back in his chair, visibly tense. "We can fix that later." "Already fixed," Elisa said, turning her laptop to show the real-time, revised and adapted version. Another silence, heavier. At the end of the meeting, the guests left with polite farewells. Victor slowly gathered his papers. "Solid debut," he said, with a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm not here to debut. I'm here to work," she replied calmly. He left without another word. Harlan approached. "Want a coffee?" "Not right now, but thank you. You just saved us from a clause that could have cost tens of thousands in legal disputes." She shrugged. "Just took careful reading." "Not everyone reads deeply. You have something rare, Elisa, and now you have the space to use it." She nodded. "We'll see what I do with it." Back at her desk, Elisa found a white envelope with no sender, just her name, handwritten. She opened it. A simple note, folded in half. Written in firm handwriting. "You represent more than you know, and you speak for many who haven't been heard yet. Thank you." No signature, no clue, but she smiled. For the first time that day, genuinely. She placed the note in her drawer. Next to it, she put her old badge. Grey badge, faded letters, not to forget, but to remember. The following week began with the kind of email that looked harmless, but wasn't. Subject, urgent review, Dubai contract from Victor d'Almeida. To Elisa Morgan, CC Harlan Brooks. Dear Elisa, please review the attached document before tomorrow's meeting with the Al Nasser Group. The current translation is in Arabic, as received from the Abu Dhabi team. I need the final version by 9 a.m. Regards, Victor. No courtesy, no warmth, just the exact tone between "I'm testing you" and "I hope you fail." Elisa read it 3 times, then opened the attachment. The document was 27 pages long, mostly technical legal Arabic, with truncated passages, ambiguous terms, and poorly scanned notes in the margins. It was 5:48 p.m. on a Monday. She took a deep breath, closed the email, grabbed her coat. On the way home, on the subway, she opened the file on her phone, started reading. While others around her complained about the train delays, she mentally translated penalty clauses, operational bond concepts, and logistics supply structures. At 10 p.m., her daughter called. Elisa answered in her usual calm tone. "Everything okay, Mum? Just reviewing some contracts." "At work?" "Yeah, new stuff." A good challenge. Elisa didn't mention the tone of the email, or the intent behind it. It wasn't the first time someone tested her. The difference now was she finally had a place to show the answer. The next morning, she arrived at 8:15. Victor was already in the meeting room. Elisa entered with the printed translation, 2 copies. She sat down. Harlan arrived a few minutes later. "Were you able to review it?" Victor asked without looking up. "Yes." "Any comments?" "A few." Page 4, termination clause. The previous version allowed unilateral exit without justification. I corrected it based on Emirates' contractual standards. And page 9, terminology error. The word used for logistics was written as storage room. In context, it changed the entire meaning. Victor frowned. "You think that's serious? If we signed as it was, we'd be accepting responsibility for third-party storage. In case of loss, we'd be liable." Silence. Harlan looked at her. "Elisa, can you show us your corrections?" She handed over the revised copy, organized, with notes in both English and Arabic side by side. Victor read silently, then closed the folder with restrained force. "All right, we'll use your version." After the meeting, he left without a word. Harlan stayed behind. "You know he's not happy, right?" "I'd be unhappy too," she said. "He lost control of a territory he thought was his alone. He's not going to help you. I didn't come here to be helped. I came to do what needs to be done." Harlan studied her for a moment. "Can I ask something?" "Sure. Why did you never tell anyone you spoke all these languages, that you knew so much?" She paused. "Because no one ever asked." At lunch, she returned to her desk. On her monitor, another email, this time from Human Resources. Subject: role review, initial performance evaluation. It was standard, but the timing was telling. The new role had barely begun and was already being monitored. Someone was applying pressure, and she knew exactly who. Perfect. Below is Chapter 3, Block 2, around 7,000 characters, written with a focus on the protagonist's inner emotions, the weight of a hostile environment, and her silent but powerful response to a system still testing her. The tension builds gradually, and the villain is revealed through action, not obvious dialogue, true to the model script. The afternoon arrived with that kind of light that can't decide between bright and grey. On the 12th floor, the window glass let in a muted glow, just enough to illuminate, not enough to warm. Elisa sat at her new desk, adjusting a logistics document in Russian, when she heard the sharp sound of footsteps in the hallway. The glass door opened without warning. Victor de Almeida. "I need you in room C now," he said, not even removing his blazer. She stood up calmly, picked up her notepad. "Any specific topic?" "Just come, everyone's there." The kind of phrase used by someone who wants to show urgency, but really wants control. Room C was a medium-sized meeting room, white walls, no view. 5 people from the operations team were already seated, along with a guest, a German executive from one of their transport partners. Elisa recognized the name on his badge, Matthias Kruger from Heisen Transport. Victor was gesturing in forced English, trying to appear in control. Matthias listened attentively, occasionally frowning. Seeing Elisa, Victor didn't even introduce her. "We've got a problem with the invoice model. The German version is causing confusion with their finance team." "Which part?" she asked without sitting. He pointed to the screen, a poorly translated spreadsheet with a mix of technical English, German, and something incomprehensible. "Was this done by AI?" Elisa asked. Victor crossed his arms. "It was automated, yes, but internally reviewed." "Reviewed by who?" No answer, just a warning glance. Elisa stepped closer to the screen. "This term here," she pointed, Warengruppenverzögerung, doesn't make sense in this context. It's being used as product category delay, but the correct meaning here would be delay due to customs inconsistencies." Kruger looked up. "Genau, das ist richtig." "And here," Elisa continued, turning to the team, "the word Lieferkette is being used as supplier, but it refers to the full supply chain. Legally, that's a major difference." Silence. Victor cleared his throat. "Then fix it, please. carefully this time. We're short on time. It's already fixed. She placed a flash drive on the table. Adjusted version, reviewed translation, contextualized terminology, with preliminary legal approval, sent last night for review. Kruger picked up the flash drive, plugged it into his laptop, and opened the file. Read for a minute in silence, then looked at her and gave a simple, weighted nod. Danke, sehr professionell. Elisa just nodded. When the meeting ended, everyone left, including Victor. Without looking back, Elisa was the last to exit. But something inside her had already moved elsewhere, somewhere firmer, clearer. For the first time since it all began, she didn't feel at a disadvantage. The world around her was still hostile, yes, but she no longer needed to defend herself. She just had to keep going. Back on her floor, she passed two interns in the hallway. One whispered something to the other, who chuckled. So now the translator's the boss. She pretended not to hear, but she felt it. Felt how each display of competence lit up corners of the company that preferred the dark. Hours later, she got a notification in the internal system. Extra meeting, functional evaluation, 6:30 p.m., room 6F. No details, no explanation. Harlan wasn't copied. Elisa looked at the clock. 5:12 p.m. took a deep breath. At 6:28, she entered room 6F. Victor was already there. So were an HR manager and a performance analyst, all with folders open. "Good afternoon," she said politely. "Please have a seat," the manager replied. She sat, hands calm in her lap, eyes alert. "We're conducting a preliminary check-in on your transition. It's a standard procedure, of course," the manager said, avoiding direct eye contact. Victor watched, no smile, no blink. "There are a few points raised," she continued, "about team dynamics, process flow, technical compatibility." "Based on what?" Elisa asked. "Soft, but direct. Internal feedback, some reports. Any formal complaints? Not exactly. Any technical errors on my part?" Silence. Victor crossed his arms. The manager shuffled a paper. "Not yet, but we want to ensure cultural alignment with the rest of the team." Elisa placed her hands on the table. "And what exactly is the team's culture?" Victor shifted in his seat. "Elisa," he interrupted, "we're just trying to determine whether this change was premature." She took a breath, then said, "I understand. When a woman who carried a mop for 7 years sits at the meeting table and corrects clauses no one else caught, it feels premature." Silence. But it wasn't premature. It was overdue. The HR manager lowered her eyes. Victor didn't. "We're simply observing," he said, as if reminding everyone who was still in charge. "Good," Elisa replied. "Observe." She stood up calmly. "Just let me know when observation turns into containment, because I know the difference." And left. No raised voice, no slammed door. The room stayed silent. Back at her desk, Elisa saw her computer screen had gone dark from inactivity. She tapped a key and the glow returned. Beside the monitor, her old badge was still there, held by a small magnet. The faded letters still visible. Elisa M. Night Shift. She looked at it for a few seconds, then at her new badge, hanging around her neck. 2 names, same person. Only the world around her had changed. She hadn't. And exactly that, was what unsettled those who never saw her coming. The email arrived on a Friday morning. No bold font, no highlight, no ceremony. Subject, name change, cultural integration room. From Harlan Brooks to Elisa Morgan, operations team. Internal communications, team starting Monday. The former integration room on the 14th floor will be renamed the Morgan Room. The decision reflects Delwyn Logistics' renewed focus on recognizing paths that combine excellence and real diversity. HB. Elisa read the message twice, then closed her laptop and breathed. There was no invitation for a speech, no event with banners and photos. It was a silent gesture, just like her, exactly like everything she had done up to that point. At lunch, she passed by the 14th floor. The door to the old integration room was slightly ajar. Inside, a new plaque, still covered by a dark cloth, had already been installed on the glass wall. Someone saw her from down the hall. "Hey, congrats, Elisa. I heard about the plaque," said an analyst, smiling. She smiled back, briefly, but sincerely. "Thank you." As she walked back, another employee approached. Young, curly hair, blue intern badge, shy eyes. "Can I just say," he began, hesitating. "When I saw you go upstairs, I thought, maybe I can make it too." She stopped. "You will. Just don't ask for too much permission." He smiled, embarrassed, and returned to his desk. On Monday, the cloth over the plaque was removed. No ceremony. Morgan Room, Center for Cultural and Language Integration below, in smaller letters, named in recognition of Elisa Morgan's skill and legacy, a symbol of resilience and fluency that transcends language. Victor walked past the room, read the sign with no expression, kept walking, then stopped a few steps later, took a step back, looked again, and then walked off, shoulders slightly more tense. That same week, Elisa was invited to give a short welcome talk to the new interns in Delwyn's international program. It was a group of 20, various ages, red program start badges. She entered with calm steps, holding only a notebook. The onboarding coordinator introduced her briefly. "This is Elisa Morgan. She's going to share a bit of her experience here. Thank you, Elisa." The room fell silent. Attentive eyes. She looked at the group, then opened the notebook, read what she had written. "You probably think respect comes with the right badge, but it doesn't." She closed the notebook and spoke with her own eyes. "Respect doesn't come with a badge. It comes with posture, with consistency, and sometimes with silence." Some furrowed their brows, others simply listened. "I came in through the service entrance, literally, and for a long time people only said hi when I emptied their trash." She paused, no drama. "But I learned that the world isn't always deaf. Sometimes it just doesn't hear those who don't shout, or those who wear the wrong uniform." The interns were silent, but attentive. "So here's my advice. Don't hide in the corners, but don't burst through the door either. Walk in like you already belong." She raised the notebook. "Because if you carry substance, at some point, someone will notice its weight. Not always quickly, not always fairly, but they will." She gave a slight nod. "Thank you." The room stayed silent 1 second longer than necessary. Then came the applause, contained, not overdone, but genuine. She stepped off the small stage without smiling too much and returned to her desk. Later that day, someone left a post-it next to her monitor. "I didn't know I could relate to someone here. Now I do." No signature. She removed the note carefully, kept it with the first letter she'd received. Folded, similar, different. Victor sat in his office staring at his computer screen. It wasn't the spreadsheet that held his focus. It was the email he had just received. Subject, "New name for integration room, official notice." He clicked it, read the contents, closed it without marking it as read. The truth was simple but uncomfortable. He thought Elisa was too much for the job, too much for the role, too much for the symbol they were turning her into. One thing is offering opportunity. Another is idolizing, he muttered to no one. On Slack, a thread about the new Morgan Room was already collecting applause emojis, hearts, and comments like "well deserved," "inspiring," and a masterclass in humanity inside this company. Victor didn't comment, but he read everything, twice, and bit the corner of his mouth. Meanwhile, in the lobby, 2 marketing employees spoke in hushed but direct tones. "Did you see they named a room after her?" "I did. I thought it was cool. I don't know, feels too fast, right? Too fast or too late? She's been here over a decade. But not in that role. There are people way more qualified." "And who speaks Swedish, Arabic, Japanese?" Silence. The second woman didn't answer, but looked around before murmuring, "She makes people uncomfortable because she shows how much good talent we overlook, huh?" In room 10B, where the international expansion team worked, Elisa stepped in to adjust a contract with the Turkey branch. Beside her were the import manager and a newly hired analyst. This section here about tax responsibility was mistranslated. In Turkish, yükümlülük can mean either debt or legal obligation. That changes everything, Elisa explained, sliding her finger across the digital document. The manager looked up. You read this in Turkish? She just nodded. I studied for 6 months when we started the partnership. I figured it might help. The young analyst beside her smiled involuntarily. The manager leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Well, looks like we'll need you in more meetings than we thought. I'm available, she replied, with neutrality. But inside, Elisa felt something new, real belonging. For the first time, she wasn't just being heard, she was being consulted. That night, she got a call from her daughter, Mariana. Mom, I saw the room with your name on the company's Instagram. I didn't even know they were posting it. Me neither, Elisa said, laughing quietly. But that's okay, life has its surprises. You deserve it. I remember you coming home in uniform every day, exhausted, and still sitting with me to go over homework. Elisa closed her eyes. And now you're reviewing ICU reports, huh? And still calling you when I get stuck, funny, right? They both laughed, and for a few seconds, there was no conversation, just the kind of silence that says everything. Days later, in a meeting with the CEO, Harlan Brooks, Elisa came in to present the report on the new multilingual supplier communication flow. Harlan flipped through the pages attentively. You restructured all this in 3 weeks? Yes, I eliminated contract redundancies, created a multilingual technical glossary, and standardized communication across 3 continents. He set the report down and looked at her. You know what scares me? Tell me, that you did all of this, after spending 13 years scrubbing floors here. Not because of you, but because of our silence. Elisa smiled lightly. Sometimes silence says more about the listener than the speaker. Harlan leaned back. We're thinking about launching an internal development program to train talent hidden in our hallways. I want you to lead it with me. She took a deep breath. I've never trained anyone. You don't need to train. You need to show what's possible. She nodded, slowly. Maybe the legacy was beginning, even if she never intended to build one. The next week, during a presentation for the board, Elisa live translated a conversation between the French team and a new Japanese partner. No pauses, not a single syllable wrong. When she finished, the room fell silent for a few long seconds. Then came the applause, sincere, even from some who once avoided eye contact. On the way out, one of the directors, grey-haired with a British accent, touched her arm. Miss Morgan, may I say something? Of course. You remind me of someone I once worked with at the UN. Brilliant linguist, calm mind, iron spine. She laughed, a little shy. I'm honored, as you should be. And frankly, it's long overdue. In the elevator, descending alone to the basement where the old locker rooms still were, Elisa caught her reflection in the mirror. No uniform, no gloves, no badge hanging. But with the same eyes as the woman who first arrived there years ago, carrying a plastic bag with dinner sandwiches, she whispered in Arabic, Al-karama la tutta, innama tuhsal alayha bi juhdika. Dignity is not given. It is earned through your own effort. And the mirror didn't reply, but it seemed to understand. On Monday morning, something felt different. There was too much silence on the 12th floor. Not the peaceful kind of silence that comes with productivity, but the other kind, dense, uncomfortable, the kind that comes before change or confrontation. Elisa felt it in the air. From the moment she entered the building, she noticed people avoiding eye contact. Colleagues who used to smile now looked away. Even the front desk security guard replied to her good morning with a short, quick nod, none of the usual warmth. Her office was just as always, tidy, discreet, practical. But outside a storm was forming, and she didn't know it yet, until Victor knocked on the door. May I? Elisa nodded, surprised. Of course, come in. He stepped in with a notepad in hand and a restrained expression, colder than usual but polite. I'm here to inform you that the board has called an extraordinary meeting for tomorrow. Topic: organizational impact of recent internal movements. She didn't hide her surprise. Internal movements. Are you referring to your promotion and everything that's followed? Elisa slowly closed her laptop. They're questioning the decision. Victor hesitated, and that was answer enough. Some believe it was premature, that steps were skipped. She took a deep breath. Steps that were never offered to me. Victor didn't reply, but his silence carried something between discomfort and admission. Thanks for the heads up. I'll be there. He nodded and left, but as he closed the door, he murmured, "Good luck." It wasn't sarcasm. It was the kind of phrase you say when you know the room will be hostile. That afternoon, Elisa stopped by the cafeteria for coffee. A group of employees whispered near the juice machine. She heard her name twice. She's making contract policy decisions now. Exactly. Talks all fancy, but last month she was scrubbing tile. This is all for show. The execs will get tired of it soon. Elisa paused, thought about confronting them, but not today. She got her coffee, walked to a window in the back and stood there, alone, listening. This was the new kind of invisibility, being seen too much and still treated like a shadow. The night before the meeting, she didn't sleep. She reviewed documents, messages, reports, but that wasn't what truly worried her. It was the idea of having to prove, again, that she was valid, that her presence there wasn't an exception. It was the correction of an omission. Her daughter called. "Everything okay, Mom? I have a tough meeting tomorrow." "Again?" "Again. Want me to pray with you?" Elisa smiled and accepted. The next morning, meeting room 9C was full. Nearly all the directors, some department heads, human resources, and Harlan Brooks, the CEO, seated at the head of the table. Elisa walked in, folders in hand. Everyone looked up. Harlan opened the meeting. "Thanks for coming. The goal today is to hear impressions, concerns, and most importantly, solutions for the transition we're currently going through." He looked at Elisa, then at the others. "Anyone want to begin?" Victor was first. "This isn't about Elisa's competence. She's proven she delivers. But we have a technical promotion track, a structure, and some people skipped steps, others followed." "You mean she skipped?" Elisa corrected calmly. Victor didn't answer. Another director spoke. "The issue is cultural. We've never promoted someone directly from operations to a strategic role. It's a sharp break from the model, could set a dangerous precedent." "Dangerous for whom?" Harlan asked, eyes fixed. Silence. Then Elisa stood up, slowly, opened her folder, pulled out a document and began. "This is the recovery report from our Middle East vendors. We corrected Arabic clauses that had been wrong for 3 years. Estimated savings, $480,000 over the next 12 months. Here the Japanese import translation review. We avoided a logistics error that would have delayed a container in Nagoya. And here's the complete review of communications with the Swedes, including live interpretation in onboarding meetings we previously outsourced." She closed the folder. "I delivered all this in 28 days, but my value isn't in these papers." She looked at them all. "It's in the fact that I did all this while hearing people whisper that I was cleaning floors just last week. And yes, I was. And still I studied at night, translated manuals on my own, learned technical terms in Swedish, in Arabic, in Mandarin. The question shouldn't be how I got here so fast. The question is how you let someone this prepared go 13 years without a single interview." The room froze. Harlan didn't smile, but his firm jaw signaled respect. "Elisa, anything else?" She took a breath. "Yes. I never asked to be a symbol. I just want to work. But if my name has become a banner, then let it shine light on where you've all been blind." Complete silence. The kind of silence that doesn't empty a room. It fills it. Harlan clasped his hands together on the table, scanning the face of each manager in the room. One by one. No one dared to speak, at least not right away. Until finally he said, "All right. If there are no further concerns, I think we have what we need to close this meeting." Victor tried to speak up. Harlan, with all due respect, no, Victor. You had your turn, now you listen. The response was curt, fair. The tension in the room thickened. Harlan turned to Elisa. Keep up the good work. Real leadership happens even when doors are closed, and you're leading. Elisa only nodded, keeping steady the heart that now beat as if asking to be heard by everyone. In the hallway after the meeting, no one said anything directly, but their expressions said enough. Less arrogance, some curiosity, a few nods as if to say respect. She walked to the restroom, entered a stall, and for the first time in weeks, sat there just to breathe. Not to cry, not to collapse, just to breathe. Because for the first time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, things were beginning to change. The following week, the atmosphere began to shift. Slowly, a young man from accounting knocked on her office door. Hi, sorry to bother you. I'm Leo. I saw your presentation at the committee meeting yesterday. I was wondering if you could recommend some resources on intercultural negotiation. I was really impressed with what you did on the Japanese contracts. She smiled. Of course. Have a seat. I'll show you some great sources. Minutes later, 2 HR interns passed by her office. One of them subtly pointed to the new nameplate on Elisa's door. Elisa Rocha, Senior Global Relations Analyst. She used to be in cleaning, right? Yeah, but now she's saving six-figure contracts. We should be learning from her. And they did. At the end of that month, Elisa received an email from the CEO. Just one line. Would you be open to leading the creation of an internal development program based on your story? She stared at the screen, didn't type right away, then with a small smile replied, yes, if I can name it, I'd like to call it internal vision. So because sometimes the talent you're looking for is just outside your line of sight. 2 weeks later, in the company's main auditorium, the inaugural session of the Internal Vision program welcomed its first cohort. 40 professionals from technical, administrative, and operational areas, people rarely invited to think strategically. On stage, Elisa spoke briefly, humbly, without dramatics. For a long time, I thought my value had to stay hidden until someone noticed. Today, I know it was always there. It just needed space, opportunity. She paused. The world is full of brilliant people no one sees. What we're doing here isn't charity. It's intelligence. It's efficiency. And more than anything, it's justice. Applause. Sincere. Long. That same night, Elisa passed by the old janitorial locker room. It was near the supply area. The smell of soap was still familiar. She walked in, like visiting a childhood bedroom. Opened one of the lockers where she used to keep her gloves, disinfectant rags. Inside, her old uniform was still there, folded. The navy blue shirt with the badge faded from time. She ran her fingers over it, picked it up, placed it in a cloth bag and took it home. Not out of nostalgia, but because it symbolized everything she had overcome and everything she still carried. The following week, a new cleaning staff member, Jessica, was seen entering Elisa's office. A little nervous, hesitant steps, but determined. Elisa smiled when she saw her. All good. Come on in. I heard about the program, and I wanted to ask if someone like me, from cleaning, could join too. Elisa didn't answer right away. She opened a drawer, took out a notebook with the program's logo and handed it to her. Not could. Should. Jessica held the notebook with both hands, struggling to hide the emotion. I speak English, you know? Elisa smiled, a smile only someone who had lived it could understand. And you're going to use that English in here. You can count on it. At the next board meeting, Harlan presented the initial results of internal vision. We've already identified 3 professionals fluent in rare languages, 5 with previous international market experience, and 2 with postgraduate degrees from foreign universities. None of them were above technical level roles. One of the directors sat silent for a moment before saying, I think we've been looking in the wrong direction for too long. Harlan replied, that's why we needed Elisa. She became the mirror. Leaving one of the training sessions, Elisa was walking through the company lobby when she noticed a handwritten note pinned to the community board. You made me believe my voice can be heard too. Thank you for leaving the door slightly open for me. No signature. She didn't need to know who wrote it, because now she understood. Her journey had left a trail, and others who once walked in the shadows now had somewhere solid to step. It was Wednesday. The Delwyn Logistics headquarters woke up under a sky far too clear for the weight hanging inside the building. On the 14th floor, the CEO's office was still silent when Harlan Brooks arrived earlier than usual. He didn't turn on his computer. He simply sat facing the window, holding a cup of coffee that had already grown cold without him noticing. The reflection in the glass showed his own face, unchanged, but there were days when even his shadow felt unfamiliar. On the desk, an envelope. It was a letter from the Diversity Committee with a suggestion to share Elisa Morgan's story in a global communication. The kind of narrative big companies use to illustrate progress. Harlan read it once, then again, then left it on the desk. That morning something was bothering him. Not Elisa, but the fact that he had never asked himself who Elisa was before seeing her solve 3 problems in 3 different languages in under 20 minutes, like so many other quiet figures who passed through the hallways. How many talents had slipped through the system's fingers? How many names without a gold badge, without a PowerPoint, without an MBA? He opened the bottom drawer and pulled out an old notebook. Inside were notes on training programs, cultural shifts, process reviews. None of it would have existed if he hadn't witnessed Elisa being more effective than half the executives in strategic meetings. But there was something he had never done, and he knew it was time. At exactly 10 a.m., Elisa went down to the lobby to meet someone Harlan had asked to be brought in personally, Mr. Armando, a retired former employee who had been her first janitorial supervisor years ago. He was more hunched over now, but still had the same gentle smile. She was different from day one, he told Harlan, sitting in the conference room while Elisa quietly listened. Never said much, but she'd read the newspaper in Russian at lunch. I thought it was just a quirk, but one day she corrected me when I said spasibo wrong. Harlan listened as if staring into a dirty mirror that was finally starting to show his own reflection. Do you remember what you told me in the 2nd month? Armando turned to Elisa. She smiled modestly. If you don't have a fancy badge, you have to work in double silence. Silence. Harlan looked at her, not as if seeing something new, but as if finally understanding what had always been there. That same day, Harlan sent an internal memo to all directors and managers. It didn't mention titles or promotions. Just one question. How many Elisas do you pass by each day without seeing? He then called a meeting with Human Resources and Corporate Communications. Elisa would co-lead the new internal vision program, yes, but now he wanted a full review cycle of internal processes, from recruitment to promotion. I don't want an inspirational program. I want a functional mirror that shows us what we've failed to see out of habit, not for lack of talent, he said. On Friday, something unusual happened. That afternoon, the facilities team reported they were moving some furniture out of the old basement storage room. Harlan asked to visit personally. He went down alone. When he arrived, he found the small room where Elisa had stored her supplies for 7 years, brooms, disinfectant, gloves. Leaning in the corner was a metal shelf with a yellow note taped to it. Please do not remove. Personal use. E. Morgan. The paper was faded with time, but still legible. He took a photo, then simply stood there, silent, staring at that shelf like someone gazing at an invisible monument. Monday, 8:02 a.m. A line of employees began to form in the main hallway on the 12th floor, not out of curiosity, but because someone had covered the Morgan room plaque with a white cloth, and without prior notice, Harlan had invited the leadership team for a brief symbolic unveiling. Elisa didn't know. When she arrived, she saw the group gathered and hesitated for a second. Harlan approached her with a slight nod. Would you mind pulling the cloth? She hesitated, looked around. Some faces smiled, others simply watched. Elisa raised her arm and gently pulled the fabric to reveal Morgan Room Strategic Center for Internal and Intercultural Development, in honor of the excellence that exists before recognition. Someone clapped, quietly. The gesture spread. Elisa just smiled with her eyes. It wasn't about her. It was about everything she represented. That week, something even more symbolic happened. During a meeting with directors, a suggestion was unanimously approved. The onboarding room for new hires would be renovated, and the company's welcome video would begin with a message from Elisa Morgan. They recorded it one evening. No wardrobe, no makeup, just her standing in front of the camera. Welcome to Delwyn. Here, your badge says your name, not your worth. Your worth comes from who you are, what you carry, what you build, even when no one's watching. There was no background music, just silence. The video was approved without edits. On Friday evening, Harlan called Elisa. "I'm still at the office. Can you come up for a minute?" She went. When she reached the 14th floor, he was standing in the hallway, facing a wall where framed photos of honored employees were displayed. But there was a new frame, with no image. Just a metal plaque, space reserved for names not yet seen. She read it, then looked at him. "It's the least we can do," he said, "and maybe the most for now." Elisa didn't reply. But in that silence, Harlan knew. The mirror was clean now, and the reflection staring back was more than just a face. It was an entire culture on the brink of transformation.